All okay? Good. I wonder, so I should get this right, I should get it in the right place before I start. There we go. I think I'm set up. I wonder, what is your life story so far? Don't panic, I'm not going to make you do this. But if you had to turn to the people around you and you had 5 minutes to tell your life story so far, I wonder what it is. What things would you include? What things might you leave out? I love the TV programme. It used to be called Piers Morgan's Life Stories. It's now called Kate Garraway's Life Stories. I don't know if you've seen it before. If you haven't, it's a ITV programme. It's a chat show where just one person is interviewed. And really they're asked questions about their lives. Sometimes people, friends and families contribute as well. I think I like it for a few reasons. Partly, I think I'm just a bit nosy. I like hearing people's stories. I like hearing how they've got to where they are in life. It really intrigues me. And you hear in these interviews a bit about the successes, the achievements. You hear the things which have been tough. And intertwined throughout all of this is the different relationships which they've had. But the thing I've noticed is that no one's life story is ever simple. I think probably if you're on an ITV chat show, in the world's eyes, you would say they'd made it. Whatever that really means, I'm not sure. But life hasn't always been simple. But each of us has a story to tell. Each of us has a story which is equally valuable, precious, significant as the people on TV. Each of us has a story to tell, which means that on the 1st of May, 2022, you are sitting here in St. Werburgh's Church, for whatever reason that you're here. And I would say that as a Christian, I think we'd all say that our life stories aren't over by the very fact that we're here, but I would say that as a Christian, that God hasn't finished with us yet, that there's more in each of us that he wants to do in us and through us. As a church, earlier this year, we were looking at the book of Hebrews. If you're part of the church, hopefully you remember that, because we did it for quite a few weeks. And we've had a little pause, and now we're coming back into that book. It's a book in the Bible. And for the next few months, we're just going to stay in one chapter. And this is a chapter which is about people actually from the Old Testament. It's a list of people, and we're going to take each of those people and look at them on a different week. And there's a whole range of people. There's young, there's old, you've got both men and women. And you've got people from a complete range of backgrounds, from kings to prostitutes. But there's something that all these people have in common. And that is that right at the center of their life stories is faith. Right at the center of their life stories is this faith in God. This faith in God which changes their lives. But actually, behind this faith in God is the faithfulness of God to them. The reason they put their faith in God is because they've discovered the faithfulness of God to them. And when people all those years ago, many, many years ago, put their faith in God, just like when people today in 2022 choose to put their faith in God, it changes things. People's lives get transformed. The impossible becomes possible. And my prayer is that for us as a church, as we journey through this chapter and we look at people from the Old Testament, that it inspires us. And as we are inspired, that within us, that our own faith begins to rise up. And that we get excited about God, that our vision of God, of who he is, of the difference he can make today, of his power, that it begins to rise up. So that is what I'm praying, that for these next few months as a church, that our faith rises up. But that it doesn't just rise up, so that on a Sunday we're here and we're excited, but it rises up so that we go out of these walls and we continue to see Derby transformed. Does anyone else feel a bit excited about that? Does anyone else want to see that happen? Good, there are some. And as we know that today, we're not just starting a new sermon series, it's all happening today. We've also got baptisms as well. And I love Baptism Sunday. I always get excited when we start planning them. And part of that is because it's such a joy to see people stand up and declare their faith in God. But you've probably guessed, the bit I love most is people telling their stories. Is hearing what they have to say, is hearing what God has been doing in their lives in 2022, in hearing how they've been transformed. And as we hear the stories today of Gary and Mick and Elizabeth and Timmy Tope, I'm excited to hear what they have to say, why they've chosen to put their faith in God. But just before we get there, just a few thoughts around faith. So firstly, what is faith? What is this thing, faith? The dictionary says that faith is simply when we put our complete trust or confidence in someone or something. So for me, as a Christian, having faith in God means that I've put my trust, my confidence in Jesus. It's about saying it's not about me, it's not about what the world says, but I choose to put my trust in Jesus. And actually, so often it slips, and I suddenly realize, my confidence is back in myself, or my confidence is in something else. But one of the things I've noticed is that when my confidence is in Jesus, it changes everything. There's a guy called St. Augustine, who's a theologian. He lived many, many years ago, but he said such wise stuff that often it is still quoted today. And this is one of the things he said around faith. He said, faith is the first step to understanding. Understanding is the reward of faith. Therefore, seek not to understand that you may believe, but believe that you may understand. In other words, we don't have to understand everything. We don't have to have everything sorted about God, and then we start to believe in him. It's the opposite. It's as we step out, it's like we know enough that we want to put our trust or our confidence in him. And as we step out and we do that, we discover more of the faithfulness of God. And I quite like the fact, it might sound a bit funny that as someone who's ordained, a clergy person, that I say I quite like the fact that I don't understand everything there is to understand about God. But the reason that is because my brain isn't that big. I can understand some things, there's lots of things in the world I don't understand. And it used to really frustrate me that I didn't get it all, I couldn't work it all out. Then suddenly I realized one day, actually, I can understand everything there is to understand about God. If there's no mystery around him, then God isn't that big. If my little brain can completely fathom it all, work it all out, then God is no bigger than me. And do I really want to give my life to follow someone who's no bigger than I am? So I've got to the place where actually I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable that I don't understand it all, but I understand enough to know that for me, he is worth following. So we're going to have a little bit of just looking at a few verses from the Bible, which tell us a little bit about faith as well. And for each of these people that we're going to hear about in the coming weeks, they've chosen to put this faith in God. They've discovered him trustworthy. So Hebrews 11, we're reading it from the Message version today. That is just a modern day version of the Bible. And this is what it says. The fundamental fact of existence is that this trust in God, this faith, is the firm foundation under everything that makes life worth living. Why don't we just pause there for a moment? I find this verse so powerful. It's reminding us that the firm foundation under everything in our lives, is this trust in God. But even more in that following God, having a trust in God is what makes life worth living. And therefore, the flip side is that when we don't have a trust or a faith in God, it means we're missing out on something which is so important. It goes on to say, it's our handle on what we can't see. The act of faith is what distinguished our ancestors, set them above the crowd. By faith, we see the world called into existence by God's world. What we see created by what we didn't see. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his sufferings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. And then this list continues of different people in the Old Testament. But as we've just seen, the first person is Abel. The Bible doesn't tell us loads about Abel, but we know that he was the son of Adam and Eve. And he and his brother both gave offerings to God. Abel was a shepherd, so he brought a sacrifice from his flock. And Cain worked the ground, so it says he brought fruits of the soil. God found Abel's offering pleasing, but he didn't like Cain's. And this made Cain really angry. In fact, it made him so angry that he invited Abel out into a field where he killed his brother. He wasn't a great big brother to have, was he? And not a great end for Abel. But just to put these verses a bit into context. That in the Old Testament, people used to take offerings or sacrifices, and they used to give them to God, or sometimes the priest did it on their behalf. And they did it because that was the way that people could be right with God. So if you wanted to have a relationship with God, because none of us live perfect lives, someone had to make a sacrifice. But that has all changed, and that's the amazing news of the gospel. Because Jesus came to earth, and he died, and he rose again. And when he died on the cross, that was the ultimate sacrifice, which means today that we don't need to keep on bringing these sacrifices, that we can have a relationship with God. And we don't know what made Abel's sacrifice to God pleasing and Cain's not. There's different theories out there, but we don't know for certain. But what I think the key is by this phrase which kept coming up, by faith, by faith, by faith. And I think the reason that his sacrifice was pleasing to God was because of his heart attitude, because he'd chosen to put his trust and his confidence in God. And because of that, it pleased God. He didn't live a perfect life. None of us do. But there was something in Cain's heart where he wasn't for God. The outward sign looked good, but the inward wasn't there. For Abel, he wasn't perfect, but he put his trust in God. And as we let faith arise, as we put our faith in God, that pleases God, and we discover his faithfulness to us. My Christian walk hasn't always been easy. My life hasn't always been simple or straightforward. And there's times when I've struggled as a Christian, but I've never regretted putting my trust in him because he's always been faithful to me. And the reason I stand here today, the reason that I have faith in God isn't about me, it's about God's faithfulness to me. And I think the older I've got, the more I've discovered that life can be complex. But having God right in the middle of it makes such a difference. It goes on in this passage. I think it's a bit of a funny verse, isn't it, where it says, and by faith Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. That doesn't mean we're going to hear his voice today, that as we do the baptisms, that Abel is suddenly going to speak. I think that is talking about the fact that the way he lived his life, that is still talked about today. He still has an influence on things today. Right now, this morning, we're talking about him. So his life here on earth came to an end. Abel still has an influence on us. He invested his life in something that has an eternal legacy. And when we walk and live with God, the most exciting thing is it's not just about now, but it's about eternity. And we start investing in something which is going to last forever. When we choose to live for God, our story becomes part of a much bigger story. It becomes part of God's story of redemption and restoration of all things here on earth. And as I said, as I've got older, you discover that things are complex and they're messy and life can be tough. And the more I've discovered that we need God restoring things here on earth. For some of you being baptized today, I wonder if a year ago someone had sat you down and told you you'd be doing this today, what you'd have said. You might have laughed at them. You might have, in your own words, told them that they weren't quite right. But each of you has been on a journey, whether that's been for many years to get to this point or whether it's just in this past year and you've been on this journey and you have discovered this faithfulness of God. You've discovered that Hebrews 11 is right and that actually you want God to be that firm foundation of your life. You've discovered that God makes everything different, that living for him is what makes life worth living. And today, as you're baptized, what you're doing is you're responding to that faithfulness of God, to that love of God. Martin Luther King once said, faith is taking the first steps even when you don't see the whole staircase. As you're baptized today, it's this significant step on this staircase of faith. As I've said, it doesn't mean that you need to understand everything. It doesn't mean that you need to have it all sorted. It doesn't mean that from day you will live a perfect life. But you're taking this step. And what you do know is that whatever life throws at you in the future, you have got God with you. You've got God right by your side, cheering you on, helping you through times. As you're baptized today, your story becomes part of God's bigger story of redemption and restoration. So in just a moment, each of the candidates are going to come up and they're going to share part of their story. And they've seen enough of God, they've seen enough of Jesus to say that I want to live for him, that I want to start to do things his way, not my way, that I want to give my life to him, and with the help of the Holy Spirit, to keep on living for him. So I'm going to invite now our 4 baptism candidates up, Timmy, Elizabeth, Gary and Mick. And it takes real courage to come up here and to share their stories today. But I've been assuring them that we're all here. We are cheering them on this morning. So if I could perhaps just, it'd be brilliant if we could get rid of all the bits we don't need. Sal, can I give you that as well? Brilliant. Fantastic. So guys, do you want to come up? Come right up here, come up on the stage. Should we give them a round of applause? Let's welcome them here. This is always my favourite bit, but I think it's probably the most nerve-wracking bit for you guys. But we're here cheering you on. So do you want to just tell us a bit of your story, Timmy Tope? What has brought you to this place today?
Good morning, church. Nice. My name is Timmy Tope. I'm currently a student at the University of Derby, studying mechanical engineering. Over the past few years, I was raised as a Christian, but I would say that my Christian walk became a lot more stronger in recent times, and that's just simply because I've been able to realize God's faithfulness and kindness towards me in certain situations and aspects of my life. I also feel that a new stage in a person's life requires a new level of commitment to Christ. Hence why I'm doing my baptism today. I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Do you want to come on up?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Hi, my name's Elizabeth, and I recently moved to Derby back in September because I started studying medicine with Nottingham University. So just a bit about myself. I've been wanting to be baptised for quite a while now. I was raised in the church, of course. I'd go to church every Sunday with my family, but really the personal relationship with God started quite a few years ago. And I think I just got to a point in my life where I realised that I cannot continue trying to control every aspect of my life myself and trying to be my own leader and my own God, and I need to place every area of my life into the hands of God and allow myself to be led by him and allow myself to walk in the path that he's laid before me. So I feel like I could go on for quite a while about my story and what I've learned and how I've changed as a person, but I think there's this particular verse that when I read for the first time it really stuck with me, and it stuck with me up until today as well, and it's from Jonah chapter 2 verse 1 to 2. And it says, "From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, 'In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead called for help, and you listened to my cry.'" Now, that verse has always spoken to me in quite a profound way, and it just shows me that even though Jonah was constantly running from God, he was constantly running away, and he wanted to do his own thing and then ask for blessing or ask for forgiveness afterwards, when he couldn't run anymore, he knew that he could still turn to God and that God would still be there and be gracious to him and to hear his cry and to help him. So that's the kind of God that I want to serve. So today is just my opportunity to publicly show my dedication to a God whose love I cannot escape.
Right, morning all.
Morning.
A bit loud. So, I'm Mick, as Jenny introduced, and I've chosen today to be baptised. As early as I can remember, the family I grew up in didn't follow religion and was taught to have faith in ourselves. We wouldn't say I didn't believe in God, but just not educated in his teachings. Growing up, my mum will vouch for this one. I was a bit of a naughty boy, but still a kind heart. As I've come to educate myself in the Lord's teachings through the Bible, I realise I've been living a life of sin, which made me want to do something about it. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
As I've never quite felt truly happy, like something was missing in my life. What caused me to want to change was the feeling I had. It was like an empty void I couldn't fill no matter what I tried. I started attending a group called Alpha here at Werbs, where I met some amazing people. Also some people from similar backgrounds as myself, which made me feel a sense of comfort knowing I wasn't the only non-Christian. I realised being a part of the church, you allow yourself to become a part of a huge family, made up of all different backgrounds, but with one of the main focuses to try and be the best versions of ourselves, following the guidance of our Lord and Saviour. It was whilst attending Alpha that I realised I wanted to be a part of this family and allow God into my life. Since putting my faith into God, I have been shown life through a different light, and that empty void I once felt has now been filled by the love, guidance and grace of God. So a verse which has lately stuck out to me is Isaiah chapter 12 verse 2. Surely God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord himself is my strength and my defence. He has become my salvation. Going forward, I don't think me getting baptised will make me the perfect Christian, but it's my way of showing to the people close to me the trust I have in God. Thank you.
You could do this.
I've got one page. I first came here in December 2020, and Denise prayed for me and my family. This is all your fault. About 5 months later, I joined the garden project, where I was gently coaxed into coming to Alpha. I met the most amazing group of people. I learned things that started to make a difference. I forgave the people that had affected my life. Through talking to James and reading the Bible, I found Do Not Worry. These were massive game changers for me. To my children and grandchildren, nothing's changed. I love you so much. This is the next step on my journey, and I'm so happy you are here to share it with me. Thank you to everybody.